right, everybody, we are joined this week with Jeremy Moore to talk shed dogs. Jeremy, how you doing this evening, man?
I'm doing really well, man. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead and for those listeners that may not know who you are, go ahead and introduce yourself and what it is that you do.
Sure. My name is Jeremy Moore. We're out of Wisconsin. We've got a company that it's a small company that we've got a couple different brands, and one of the brands that we have is Dogbone, and Dogbone it's a company that started out probably a little more niche than it is right now, but we got some traction with a product line that I developed for training dogs to find antlers. And so shed hunting is a passion of mine. It has been for a long time. Shouldn't say it always has been, because a lot of years I wanted to find an antler and couldn't. I looked a lot prior to using the dogs. I enjoy it 1,000 times more. Like it's a lot. The shed hunting for me is a lot like hunting in general. I think we all evolve as time goes on, but I enjoy things that I can use my dogs with, and so I'm a dog guy, and I from a hunting dog standpoint, to me, a lot of the hunting I do is because of the dogs. It's something that without them, it's just not as much fun for me. So shed hunting is what really kind of got our brand started. And then from there, we've evolved. Like, we came out with a line of tracking products for training dogs to find wounded deer. It was logical following our shed dogs, because a lot of the people I was training dogs for they were really into deer hunting. And so it was a logical thing to have it, if you could have a dog do sheds for you with you in the spring, and then track for you in the fall. And so that made sense. So we kind of got this idea of, okay, we're developing these deer dogs, and that was something that really helped grow our brand from the early inception. And then in more recent years, we've also, I prior to doing this with the dogs, I was a gun dog guy, big waterfowler, and upland, hunted a lot of upland early on. And so our brands, we're moving towards, developing into those areas again from a product standpoint. But there's so many products out there, and a lot of them are good. And I believe in, there are certain things that can help me do my job as a trainer more effectively, maybe more efficiently. And so I don't think dog training's been around for a long time, and no one's reinventing the wheel with anything. But I do think I do think there's always ways to improve on stuff, and I think it's ways to improve specifically to fit. For me personally, I'm working towards making my life a little easier. That means that because of certain styles of training, certain styles of dogs, there are things that it's not always a one size fits all. And so we've worked really hard to create stuff that we think brings value. And then I think maybe more importantly than the tools are, how do you use them? Like my background's construction, and I did construction before I did this. And you could give tools, you could give a tool belt full of tools to someone, and it doesn't mean they're a carpenter. Like, you can't just start building stuff because you got a belt. And so you got to know how to use them. And one of the things that we focus on as a business is provide them with what I think are the best tools, and then more importantly, show them how to use it. And so we've really put a ton of effort into trying to support that, the use of our stuff in that way.
Now, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of people, they get into this world, they get a dog, and they want to go do some kind of activity with their dog. And they always kind of look for that golden, fill in the blank. It could be any kind of training tool, training gimmick, a method, whatever. They want a one-size-fits-all deal. And kind of like what you said, there's just too much variables. Every dog's different. Every handler's different. Every situation is different. So, if you don't know the actual equipment and products that you're getting and utilizing, you can't really put it to train the dog in the best way, right? Or at least how it was designed for. But let's go ahead. This is a hunting dog podcast. I'm sure most people listening to this, they know what a shed antler is.
Sure.
But we also get a lot of new people listening, so maybe they don't know what a shed antler is. Maybe they've never hunted deer. Maybe they don't have any interest. But real quick, just talk to us. why did you fall in love with shed hunting? What is shed hunting, and what spoke to you about it so much?
Yeah, so deer, they grow antlers. So it's the fastest growing like thing out there in nature. Like it's faster growing than tumors. Like it's the fastest growing thing. It's renewable. It does these bucks grow antlers every year and they shed them. And when you think about it, some of them are growing like 180 inches, 200 inches in a season, and the season is really short. So there's this process that takes place. They grow, they harden, they use them for multiple reasons throughout the fall, and then all of a sudden their bodies change, the testosterone levels change and drop off. They're no longer breeding. I mean, a deer's life is pretty simple: breed, like pass your genetics, and stay alive. That's about it. And so when they get past the point of using them as a tool, as a utilitarian thing, their body has to conserve energy to get through the winter. So they no longer are producing these hormones and testosterone. They literally don't, it takes energy to hold the antlers. I mean, some of these antlers are pretty heavy too. It takes away from their body. And so they cast them off, and then they regrow them the following. I mean, they almost start growing, like they're not growing now, but it won't be long, and all of a sudden we'll start to see these at the pedicle, at the base. You'll start to see these little bumps, and then I mean, it's amazing. We run, I'm a big deer hunter. I'm really passionate about deer. I'm from Wisconsin, and a lot of people in Wisconsin are, but it's been something we were raised with. Well, I was raised with it more of like a venison, like it was to fill our freezers. Now it's not necessarily just about that, but that's a big part of it. But the deer part for me has evolved over the years, where I used to shoot every deer I saw. Like growing up, I was a killer. I mean, I wanted to shoot them all. And I was kind of raised that way. Like we did shoot a lot of deer, and we did eat a lot of deer. And now it's like I've gotten to this point where I enjoy my kids doing that part of it as much as I did when I was their age. And I personally am, I went through this phase where I was into really big deer. I wanted to kill the biggest ones. I always wanted to kill the old, the biggest bucks. Now I like shooting old ones, and they're not always the biggest necessarily. But so as a hunter, I've evolved through these phases of hunting, and I think most do. From a shed hunting standpoint, like it's not, to me, deer hunting to me is not just about shooting a deer anymore. Like I actually enjoy managing deer and trying to manage deer. Managing deer is pretty easy. Managing people, that's where the challenge is, So,
Yeah.
but like you really, we hunt on land where we try to manipulate the land and create habitat and do all these things to improve it. We pass on certain young deer with the hopes that they grow bigger the next year. It's like it's this much bigger, more complex thing for me now. Well, shed hunting fills in a lot of the voids from a year-round standpoint. Like it does a few things for me. It gives me something to do in the spring. Like I'm cooped up in the winter, man. It's pretty cold up here, and there's a lot of snow. And like I would love to. I mean, we go sit on ice and fish. Like that's what we do in the winter. So I look forward to the time of year to be able to get out, walk, stretch my legs. I enjoy. It's part of why I love upland, is because it's great exercise for me. I get in the best shape of my entire year in October, and it's because I grouse hunt and I hunt woodcock. And so in the spring, I wear a lot of boots out. I mean, we put a lot of miles on, and we cover ground, and you find these. I mean, it's like a big Easter egg hunt for adults, basically. And you find these antlers, but from a deer hunter's perspective, it really helps me complete the circle a little bit, because we look at trail cam. I run trail cameras year round, and we look at these pictures, and we think we know what these deer are, and when we can actually pick the antlers up and measure them, like how many times the guys have told me, I got a 150-inch buck on camera, and the next year they found the sheds off of it. Well, they're like 50-inch sheds. Well, it's not a 150-inch deer, but so we're looking at it and we're going, we really can actually tangibly hold them and look at them and go, yeah, it's exactly what I thought, or it's a lot bigger than I thought, or it's not quite as big as I thought. I look around my living room, and we've got these deer on the wall, and I go, back in the day, I used to dream about like shooting a deer that I had the sheds off of. Now, most of the deer we could kill, we've got a year or 2 or 3 years of sheds from them. And when you start getting into it, it's a lot like training dogs. Like on the surface, it's pretty simple. I mean, training dogs is simple. Shooting deer is simple. Like you get in a spot where they are, you shoot them. But you can get into layers of complexity in anything we do. Like being a carpenter is simple. You build stuff. But go on a job site for a day and follow a carpenter around and realize how many little things that you got to pick up on and understand. And you don't get that without experience. And so shed hunting is a part of deer hunting to me that brings a lot of benefit from a deer hunting perspective. I go in areas in the spring that I never go in any other time of the year because I don't want to pressure deer. Like I think pressure is really important to keep off of deer if you want them to live on your property. And so, but I'll go in there in the spring because they're not there. They're not living there. It's not like I'm trying to hunt them next week. So it's a thing that it's part of. So that's like the shed aspect of it. And shed hunting has really grown in popularity. When I first started doing it, like I could knock on doors. I would literally drive around and look for standing crops, and I'd look for trails that would cross in the road in the winter, and I'd be like, okay, I got to get permission on that piece because there's a cow path going in there of tracks. There's standing corn or there's beans or whatever. I know there's going to be sheds there in the spring, and so I would try to get permission, and most farmers loved it because they would get them in their tractor tires. They didn't like antlers because they're $500 tires every time they hit one. Yeah. So it was a lot of times we'd knock on doors and people would, what do you mean? You're going to go look for those things? Yeah, totally. Now you knock on the doors and like, you're lucky to get on maybe 1 out of 5 places because our nephew shed hunts or our son does or whatever. And that's okay. I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's interesting. I think it's something that like some people compete, like from a dog standpoint, there's competitions, and I'm not a competition guy with any of my dogs. I'm a hunter. My dogs are hunting dogs. But I think it's great because it's giving us another thing to do with our dogs from a training perspective, from a purpose perspective. I think they all need jobs. I think the more we can do with them, the better our relationship is with them.
Yeah. I would agree 100% with pretty much everything you said. I mean, everything from, when I first got in the outdoors, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, whenever that was, you never really heard anything about shed hunting. It was something that you might just stumble upon if you're out walking enough and you're, oh, cool, I found a shed.
Sure.
But to your point now, it's like you have people that, they go full on shed hunting. Like, that's what they live for. They train their dogs. They compete, like you said. But I'm with you in terms of I enjoy it just because, especially us bird dog guys, once hunting season's over and spring hits, you kind of have this little lull before summer and trying to get dressed up for testing season, hunting season all over again. And if you're not a turkey hunter, it's like, well, what do I do?
Right.
And this is just something to get out with your dog, and it's a lot of fun. And so, I've collected some good sheds over the years, but I've never really targeted them, especially with my dogs. It's really more or less my dogs are force fetch. So it's like if I see one way off in the distance, I'll just send them in and grab it. It's not quote unquote shed hunting though. And so that's why I wanted to get you on is kind of break this down because I know a lot of people that listen to this, my friends included, myself included, it is something that they would like to do. It gives them something to get off the couch and go do in the spring. So I wanted to get a little bit more breakdown in terms of what a shed dog actually does, what a finished product looks like, and then backtrack from there and kind of give us the foundational tools to set our dogs up to maybe go out and find a few sheds this spring. Sure. So start with the finished product. What does a finished shed dog look like?
So I think that's a really good question. And I don't know that I have the answer. I look at it and I go, what does a finished retriever look like? It's different to every person, And so for me, I can tell you what it looks like to me. And then I can probably tell you what a lot of people probably think. And I think that that's where we get into trouble. Like I think people have to have understandings that no different than a gun dog or an upland dog, they're not robotic. These dogs aren't robots. They're tracking dogs are not robots. Like there's a definite relationship between the handler and the dog. And so when you get both of the parties working together, it's like watching a dance. Like I'm from this little town called Pulaski. It's the polka capital of the Midwest, man. Like we have the biggest polka festival in the Midwest. So I go to polka days. It's a 3-day event. Like I love it. And so I'm not a polka, like I don't polka. I mean, I do really late on Saturday night. I really get good, but I watch it and I do enjoy it, and I love the music part of it, and I'll do dance a little bit, but not much. But I watch people do it, and you can tell people. It's very clear to watch when two people know what the other person's going to do, and they dance together. It can be pretty impressive. When two people go out there that don't know what they're doing very well or don't know each other very well, like that can get a little bit clumsy and a little bit awkward. Well, I think the same is true with the dog that's working with the handler. And so for me, what does a shed dog look like? Well, I like a dog that goes out and quarters and casts for me. Now, the same dogs that I'm going to use to shed hunt with, I'm going to be in the fall, in September, October, and November, I'm going to be in the uplands with. So I don't want a dog working out a gun range, because I don't think it's fair to have two sets of rules for dogs. Like I don't think it's, hey, today we're doing this and tomorrow we're going to do that, and expect them to be able to just like, oh yeah, we'll change the way we do things. I'm a big believer in consistency. So when it comes to getting good results with dogs, so I like dogs to work within gun range. To me, gun range is 25 yards and in. I'm in pretty thick cover. So,
I didn't ask you this, but I'm assuming by all this, you're hunting uplands with your flushing dogs, your labs and stuff like that. Am I correct?
Yep.
Do you work any other breed besides retrievers and flushers?
It's funny. I've got my 13-week-old setter behind me right now. So I've not owned anything outside of retrievers prior to this dog. So I've got this dog because I do so much grouse hunting. I got a cabin up in northern Wisconsin, and the last few years we've really gone back to doing that a lot more. I used to do it when I was younger. Started doing it a lot more the last few years. Really enjoy it. I'm getting old is what it amounts to. There's certain things that I enjoy different these days, and that's one of them. And so this setter pup is going to make me a better dog trainer. I'm not going to train her much different, I don't think, than I write for Gun Dog Magazine, and I do a column for the last 4 years. This is the 4th year I've always done something about retrievers, something with my flushing dogs. And my primary focus is Labradors. That's what I've owned for I got my first one in 99. And I've had lots of them since, and I've trained lots of them for clients since. But prior to that, I had golden retrievers. So I'm a retriever guy. That's been with me forever. And this setter is going to make me better. And I've had a lot of people tell me how, and I've studied. I'm actually writing a column for Gun Dog this year. 2 out of the 6 articles have been submitted now. It's documenting how I'm going to train a setter, because I don't know how to train a pointing dog. So because I've never done it. And so I'm going to share my experience with it, because I think it could be valuable. I don't write for Gun Dog to help professional trainers be better trainers. I write for Gun Dog to help people like me who are training their own dog. And that's why I love the name of your podcast. That's why I think we talked a little bit before, and I just think it's a fit, because I'm probably more relatable to most of your listeners, just simply because I'm not a kennel. Like I don't train. Yeah. Every dog I train dogs for clients, and we breed a little bit, but it's all very, very micro and very specific. And I train each one of them like I would my own personal dog. So like I've got a litter of puppies in my mudroom right now, right behind me. I've got my setter puppy right here. I've got one of my 9-year-old Labrador right there, and I've got my 4-year-old Labrador right there. And there's 2 pups in the back. One of them the guy I work with here is keeping one, so I'm going to be doing a training series with it, and I'm keeping the other one back to train myself. My son, who's 20, he's got a 1-year-old that we bred last year, so he's kept that one. When I train a dog for someone, I'm training it like it was my own. And so I have a different schedule than a professional dog trainer. Like,
Yeah.
I have a different routine than the guy that's got to work 36 dogs a day. I have the same routine that probably most of your listeners are listening to. I'm the guy too that has soccer practice and volleyball and this kid and that kid and this and that, and the business is down the road and I got to do this. And so where do we fit in our dog training? You know, my shed season's coming up. Like, I'm going to be shed hunting in the next 30 days. And so I've got 20 acres here and I've got it set up pretty good. Like, I maximize just about every square inch of this property. And it's a combination of deer stuff because that's my life. It's also a common, I raise 500 pheasants a year and let them go. And so that's part of my life. We've got ducks in the fall. We've got a pen with birds. I do everything on a real micro level because it's just the right amount for me to do for the dogs I'm training. It's really like most people that train their own dogs do it, So
100%.
So for the shed dog part of it, I like dogs that quarter and cast, cover some ground, because as I'm working through, I'm covering ground too. I mean, I don't sit in the truck. I think some people think I sit in the truck, drink coffee, and let the dog fill the back. I wish it were that way. It's not. I walk way more miles with the dog than I ever did without. That's part of why I find more sheds. Like, if you do something, I do it more often. I'll shed hunt more often once I have a shed dog than I did before. But I also grouse hunt. I wouldn't grouse hunt. If you saw where I grouse hunt, if you've ever hunted in northern Wisconsin, you'll know I would not walk through that shit if I didn't have a dog with me. Like, I'm doing it for the dogs half the time because I love to see those dogs do what they do best in those scenarios. And if you asked me to go walk and try to flush woodcock and shoot one, I'd say I'm not wasting my time. I don't like the birds that much. Like, I love grouse. I love grouse dogs a lot more. So I wouldn't put myself through it. Same shed hunting. Yeah, I'd shed hunt. I'd probably do it off of a four-wheeler. If I didn't have a dog, I'd be on a four-wheeler. I'd run the edges of the trails. I'd hit the fields. I'd pick up antlers, but I go way deeper. I get more into it. I put more miles on. I get in much better shape. I do it more often because I have the dog. So, But I like that dog that quarters within gun range. I need a dog that will use his nose and use his eyes. Like, I don't want a dog that's exclusive one way or the other, and you can't. Like, this is natural to dogs. They use their nose, I think, like I use my eyes. So, but I also realize what their capabilities are, and they can't smell an antler unless they're downwind of it. Well, I need them to understand if they see the antler, go pick it up too. So I also don't, people talk a lot about range, and a lot of people, when I tell them that my dogs work within 25 yards, they go, well, I don't want that. I want a big ranging dog. And I go, okay, I challenge you, next time you're in the woods shed hunting, just stop at any random point and spin around 360 degrees and tell me if you can see any further than 25 yards. If there were an antler laying within 25 yards of you in any direction, would you be able to spot it? Because half the time you can't. You're going to have to literally step on them to see them. So, I mean, we're not talking about hunting alfalfa, cut hay fields. Stevie Wonder can find sheds in those. Like, you don't need the dog to cover an alfalfa field. You need them where it's real thick cover, where they're spending a great majority of their time from a bedding perspective. So that's where I want those dogs for that kind of stuff.
What we actually call wildlife cover. Habitat.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where they're at. A food plot is not habitat. A food plot,
sure.
It may feed some animals, but it's not quote unquote habitat. So when you say that they're smelling, what exactly are they smelling in the shed? Because most people it's just essentially dry bone.
Sure.
Essentially,
Sure.
I know when they first drop, there's a little waxy substance at the end. Is that what they're smelling, or is it something completely different?
So think about it this way: if you've got a cadaver dog that finds dead people, right? So if you got a cadaver dog and someone dies in the woods or is buried, something happened and somebody buried somebody. Okay, so they bury this body. For the first week, it's going to smell like something. A month later, it's going to smell like something probably a little different. A year later, it's going to smell like something different than that. 10 years later, it's going to smell different than something like that. A cadaver dog is going to find it next week or 10 years from now because the dog is going to understand that as this thing decomposes and breaks down, it just changes. But there's scent clues there that the dogs are going to be exposed to and understand that that's the target, that's the goal. So that's a pretty dramatic, for people that are listening. You go, well, yeah, obviously it's a person, it's a body, and it's decomposing. It's going to have a ton of scent. Yes, it will. But the body that's laid for 10 years, it's completely broken down and all that's left is bone, that has scent to it too. The bone that sits in the desert and gets real dry and cracked and brittle, it has scent to it too. It's calcium, it's salt. It's made of, when my wife makes vegetable soup and my dogs come in here, they don't smell vegetable soup. I do, but they don't. They smell the peas, the vegetables, the carrots, the salt, the pepper, the water, whatever. If you take water from my tap, it smells different than water from the tap down the road. Like, all of those have different scents to the dog. And the dog processes that very quickly and understands all those different elements. So when it comes to an antler, here's an antler. Well, this one fell off yesterday. It's got this scent on it. This one fell off a month ago. That one fell off 3 years ago. They all have some of the same scents, and then they all have some that are unique. The scent that the shed that lays in the woods, and the coyote comes up or the fox comes up to it and smells it and chews on it, because that's like nature's chew toy. Like, it's calcium, it's rich. They get value out of it. I find antlers that are chewed in the woods. Everything chews on them. Mice and squirrels make a living on them.
I was about to say squirrels go crazy for them.
Absolutely. So all of those contacts add a layer of scent to it. The coyotes and the fox mark them a lot of times. Like, it's a dominance thing. It's a canine thing. So they'll pee on them. So that urine has a lot of scent to it. Now, that urine wasn't on before, but what was on before? Well, that deer's glandular scent from his forehead. The pedicle and base has this. A lot of times I find these fresh sheds and they have almost this green. It almost looks like snot a little bit. Like, it's got scent to it. I don't know what that. It's like a mucus almost. I think it's something from the separation of the membrane. They rub on. I find sheds that have cedar ground into them, pine ground into them from rubbing and from them doing different things throughout the year. Mud caked into them. All sorts of scents that are associated with that antler. And a lot of people will go, antlers don't have that much scent. And I tell people, well, take your antlers, fresh antlers especially, take your antlers and put them in a Tupperware tote and put a lid on it and close it up. And then set it in the front seat of your truck on a sunny day, and it'll heat up and get nice and warm. And take the lid off and take a whiff of it. It'll just about knock you over. Like, it stinks. It's real. But the reason we can smell it in that situation is because it's concentrated. It's a lot of active scent things in a sealed container, and it's heated up. And so we can smell it. Well, we can't smell anything compared to our dogs. But if we can smell that, now just dissect that, dilute that way down, and realize, I might not be able to smell it, but I know my dogs can. And so there is a lot of scent involved with it. It's just having them understand that this is like a good shed. A good shed dog to me is kind of like a tracking dog. They're problem solvers. They take pieces of a puzzle and they try to put the thing together. So what I want a dog to do, and I do this, this is how we get him to start having this click, is the idea of, in our training, we associate. My dogs are really driven by retrieve. Like, a retrieve is a big reward for my dogs. It's their last name, Labrador Retriever. So they've been bred to do it. I associate the idea of certain smells are worth going to look at. Certain shapes are worth picking up, because Dad gets real excited when I bring it back. Like, my dogs don't get, I think people think that bird dogs retrieve birds because they like birds. We have a TikTok page, and I did this seminar, and the guys took this little clip out of a seminar that I did, and they made a TikTok video, and it got a lot of interesting feedback, and it got some, how guys are with dogs, and a lot of ego out there. And so it's a 30-second TikTok. First off, you have to take things within context, right? So it's a good lesson for all of us. Don't be that guy on TikTok that makes the comment. But anyway, so I got a lot of people made these comments, and because my little TikTok video said, it was 30 seconds out of a 1 hour long video, and I said, duck dogs don't retrieve ducks because they like ducks. Duck dogs retrieve ducks because they like to retrieve. I can throw a stick in the same spot in the shittiest conditions, and my dog will run out and pick it up and bring it back the same as he will a duck. It's not because he likes sticks. It's because he likes to retrieve. We associate certain things to equal retrieve. And I caught all kinds of hell because my duck dog is a duck dog. Blah, blah. Well, fine. I don't mean to hurt people's feelings. But I look at sheds very similar to the idea of shed dogs pick up antlers because antlers equal retrieve to them. And that's a big reward. And so what I want them to do is understand certain shapes are that reward. I don't want them picking up pop bottles. I mean, you could train a dog to go and pick up pop bottles, empty pop bottles. And in the spring of the year, my road would be a great place to go because when the snow melts, it's full of them. But you think about, canine units and guys that are training these dogs to find drugs and explosives and all these different things. Why are we using some of the dogs that we're using? Some of them are very intelligent, very trainable, great noses, natural game finding ability is built into these dogs for hundreds and hundreds of years, and we as humans have kind of like shifted them to fit our little niche things that we want them to do. Well, that's all we're doing here with a shed dog is we're getting the dog to understand certain stuff is worth picking up and bringing back to dad.
Yeah, we're using their natural drives and talents and trying to direct it, essentially. Going back to those work dogs, the canine dogs, heck, most of their drive, their reward, that we like to call it, is this a ball, right?
Sure,
It's
sure.
Just a little play ball,
right.
And, back to your point on the retrieving drive, I've got German dogs. I've got a small Munster Lander. I went quail hunting a few weeks back. And she brings me a freaking possum.
Sure.
Now, is she called a possum dog? Does she love possums? No, she just found game. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to bring it back to dad.
Totally. And especially a German dog, because hair, fur, feathers, it doesn't matter. Like, look at what they've done with those dogs for years, right?
Exactly. So how do we go about, I'm at square one. I get this dog, talk to me like I'm asking you a bunch of questions on, if you'll train my dog or something.
Yeah.
I got this brand new dog, hasn't been taught anything except for maybe some basic obedience, potty training, whatever. And I want to teach it to shed hunt. What are the foundations? What does a dog absolutely have to know? Like, we're not talking about a competition level shed dog. I just want something that I can go out in the springtime with my dog, have some fun, and hopefully come away with a few sheds.
Yeah, competition or no competition, I don't see it any different. Like, a hunting dog is a hunting dog to me. And so and that's a great question because it's maybe going to be a boring answer to some people, and they're going to be like, oh, God, this again. You can't build a building without a good foundation. Like, that's construction talk, right? You can't build something without something solid underneath it because it will fall down. The same is true with a dog, regardless of what you're training them to do. So if the dog you described, that new dog, fresh dog, you nailed it. Potty training is what I do first because I don't like them pooping and peeing in my house. But from there, we start to build on other things as far as foundation. The reason you have to have that is because when I go out in the field and I start doing some more specific drills that are going to be developing and shaping some of the habits and behaviors that I want a shed dog to do, quartering and casting, picking stuff up for me, retrieving it, delivering it to hand. I mean, simplify a shed dog. They quarter and they cast, they use their nose, they use their eyes, they find something, they pick it up, they bring it back. Like that, real simple, right? So in order to do that, I take a very similar approach. I mean, think about what a duck dog does. What does a duck dog do? Sits quiet, patiently and steady, watches the skies. When birds go down, they run out or swim out, bring them back. Like, that's simple. Like, why aren't we? I mean, that's so simple. But we all know that there's a lot of complication in there. The steadiness doesn't come very naturally. The idea of delivery to hand doesn't always come very naturally. The idea of getting to the duck blind doesn't happen naturally unless you have a dog that's relatively obedient and well-disciplined. You can't have a dog steady if they're not disciplined.
Everything from 1,000-foot elevation looks simple until you get right down in there and you lose sight of the forest through the trees. That's when it gets complicated, and it's like, okay,
right.
There's a lot more to it. End goal of mine is, I thought this was going to be simple, but there's a lot of steps.
Right.
So, it talks to me like, what are the tools that we need to have ready before we start, quote unquote, shed training?
Yeah. Heel, sit, stay, come when I call you. Like that's the exact same. So the beauty of this is it's the exact same foundation. If I'm going to develop a gun dog, if I'm going to develop an upland dog, I'm training a pointing dog that's laying here behind me, and I'm going, what do I need to train this dog? Well, first off, I'm not going to train her to point. She does it. I don't train retrievers to retrieve. They do it. What I do is I get them to do it how I want them to do. I help to shape and manipulate it and hone it more specifically. But what am I going to do with this little setter? She's laying on her bed right now, very nicely, quietly. We just did a podcast specifically about talking about place training. Now, different place training than handling and that kind of stuff. But like, just lay on your bed, be quiet, and be patient. It's a cultural thing. I turn and I look at each one of my dogs. That's what they've been doing all evening. In order for me to enjoy this setter this fall, I'm going to want her to be able to point birds. I'm going to want her to make some retrieves. I'm going to want her to do some hunting dog stuff. In order for me to enjoy her between now and then, during that window of time, which is relatively short, the 2 to 3 month window where I get to hunt her, and then beyond that until the following fall, what am I going to do? I'm going to want to take her camping. I'm going to want to take her to the kids' softball games. I'm going to want to have her in my living room. I'm going to have friends that come over with little kids. I'm going to have all these things that this dog is going to see, and she's going to have to behave. My wife wants to take her for walks, so she's going to have to be able to walk well on lead and off. So that foundation, heel, sit, stay, come when I call you. Simple. There's only 4 things there. And I always tell people that because it's not an awful lot, but it's got to be damn good. And in order for that to happen, in order for me to do the hunting dog stuff, I can't do it without that stuff. I also can't enjoy the dog the way I think a dog should be enjoyed, because she's not a 4-wheeler that I park in the shed when the season's done. She's with me all the time. So a really good... Go ahead.
Real quick, I'm going to add something. You said sit here, he'll stay. But a lot of that you're talking about is ultimately socialization.
Totally.
So it's basic obedience and socialization, the same thing that we preach about, no matter if you're developing a versatile NAVHDA dog, a retriever dog, any dog,
right.
Really, it comes back to obedience and socialization. So it's really no different. Whatever you're wanting to do, you still have to have the foundation as a companion and a all-around dog first.
Right. I mean, I don't want to get too deep on you, but like, look at this. Like, you're raising a 1-year-old. You got a little daughter, right? Mm-hmm. I've got a 3-year-old daughter. I've got a 12-year-old daughter, and I've got a 20-year-old son. I've learned a lot from the 20-year-old son to the 12-year-old daughter, and I'm learning a lot more from the 12-year-old daughter to the 3-year-old. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, yeah, I don't think I made a lot of mistakes necessarily with one or the other, but I am approaching it differently with each one, partially because of the different point in my life. But one thing that is true, whether it's my 20-year-old, my 12-year-old, or my 3-year-old, and it will be for my grandkids and it will be for my hopefully great-grandkids, like one thing that is really true throughout the ages, it never goes away, is in order to have them be successful and productive in society, they got to be good people. So if I want to create a kid that's going to be a basketball player, like he's going to be a very good basketball player, collegiate or professional basketball player, you know what the best way for him to get that? Now he's going to need a lot of skills and talent and all, and it's going to take a hell of a lot of work and all this stuff. But he's going to have to be a pretty good person, because if he isn't, he'll be in jail. Like he'll get if he runs in the wrong group, he's going to get into trouble, and all of a sudden he's not in position to become a professional basketball player anymore. Yeah. You got to have a good, like, our life has to have a good foundation. Like I can't quote Bibles or anything, but like I have a strong faith, and I think faith is really important to get us where we want to go in life. Like I just really believe that. That's pretty simplistic, and it comes with a very simple base of make good decisions, be a good person, do good things to those around you. Like, I think that's all karma stuff. The dog is the same way. Like, make good decisions. Don't be an asshole. Don't get into shit. Like, be a good, but we have to help them understand what those good decisions are. So that basic stuff has to be there. More specifically, like, so I like a drill. We do memories. I work a lot of memory work. This is more talking technical dog stuff. I do a lot of memory work. I do a lot of memory work for lots of reasons with all my dogs. I think it creates steady dogs. I think it creates dogs that are patient. I think it creates, with a shed dog specifically, it teaches a dog to start understanding that the things aren't always thrown that I'm picking up. Because one of the things that people make mistakes with is, so we have this training antler that I use, and the reason I use it is because I introduced a young dog to a hard antler before I developed this. I threw an antler for a young dog. She was about 6 months old. She was pretty energetic. She had a lot of go. She ran up, she poked herself, and she was afraid of antlers. I bought her to be a shed dog, and she hated antlers at 6 months old. I knew I had a problem. I thought about it, and I went, well, I don't introduce pheasant dogs to pheasants by putting them in a pen with a rooster and hoping they turn out. It won't work. There's too many uncontrolled things, and you're going to have a negative, and I'm going to have a dog that's afraid of it. So I introduce dogs to get them to birds. I start with a balled up sock. I went to a canvas bumper, a tennis ball. I tied feathers to a dummy. I took incremental steps to get them to the bird. I started taking incremental steps to get a shed dog to an antler. So I use this thing that looks like an antler, but it's kind of soft and flexible, and it's not going to poke or jab the pup. And I'm going to be able to add some scent to it, make it smell like an antler. I'll take steps to get them there. But I started with this puppy, and I threw this hard antler, and she was afraid of it. So I look at the idea of a lot of people throw stuff for their retrievers. And it's natural. It's predator prey. It's ingrained in them. They see stuff, it drops, they run, they get it, they bring it back. The problem is they do that with antlers. They do that with our training dummy. They do it with the antlers. They're all good with that. And then they take them shed hunting, and the dogs work through, and they go right over the top of antlers, and they go, she just doesn't get it. She doesn't get it. You trained the dog to chase stuff down that you threw. Yeah. You have to teach the dog to understand to pick stuff up off the ground.
Yes.
And so
I talk about this all the time. In our world, we talk a lot of NAVHDA and specifically duck search. And I've helped a few people come over the NAVHDA duck search challenge, where the dog has to independently go search for a duck that they've never seen thrown, flying, or anything like that, if you're not familiar with it. And I'll just go watch. I'll go out there with them to a pond or something, and I just watch what they do first. Because, I'm not a pro trainer or anything, but I can't really give you my advice until I know what it is that you're doing. And you probably wouldn't be shocked at how many times you go there and they just stand on the edge of the bank, throwing bumper after bumper after bumper. Sure. And it's like your dog will go get it till it drops dead after 5,000 of those reps. But then you wonder why, when you line it up and try to send it, the dog doesn't want to go anywhere because it's used to that bumper landing 15 yards in front of them.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, you get the same thing with, we get dogs that hit these imaginary distance breakers, like they can only run out 35 yards, 40 yards, and they hit a wall and they break down and they hunt short. And they've been
throwing it.
Yeah, I say, show me how far you can throw a dummy, because that's as far as the dog knows to hunt. So I use memories. That's another reason I use a memory. I can extend the distance. I can walk a mile back and send the dog. I can't throw a mile forward. So, but what I get is this separation of time, and I think timing is a critical part of training. But it's also important from a memory standpoint for dogs to understand short-term and long-term memory. Our retrievers have to remember stuff. They have to remember marks from things prior to. If we shoot two birds and I send them on one, I want them to have some recollection of the second bird to be able to at least take an initial line. If I have to handle them, I handle them. But and I don't trial. So like those, it's really important for them because they're doing 3, 4, 5 marks at a time. And so, but I look at this idea of long-term and short-term memory, and I believe really heavily in that these dogs have the ability to process them both differently. The short-term memory is really important because from a training perspective, we have to take it into consideration. Like our timing for praise and our timing for correction has to be less than that window, or they don't know what it's for. So if you correct them for something that they did 3 or 4 seconds ago, they think you're correcting them for whatever they did right before you corrected them, not what they did 3 or 4 seconds ago, which is what you meant to be. So you miss it. Yeah. And so I think timing is something that becomes it's a reflex. It needs to become a reflex for a handler. You don't get that by, like, you want to see me look silly, have me do something that I haven't done for a long time or I've never done before, and go, man, is he uncoordinated? Well, it's because I'm not used to it. But let me practice it a little bit. Let me get a little cadence. Let me get a little rhythm. Let me get a little understanding of all the things that are going to follow once I do this, this, and this, so I can start anticipating it a little bit. And you'll watch people develop skill quickly in front of you. The same is true with a dog. Like, we do handlers workshops where people bring their dogs, and we don't train the dogs so much as we do the trainers. But in 3 days, we work with people. And I think the biggest takeaway they take from that is an understanding of timing and an understanding that they suck at it and they need to get better. And so what they'll end up doing is by the end, I'll start seeing people do something with their dog and then they smile or I see them react and I go, you knew it, you missed it, you knew it, but at least you recognized it. Because when you first came here, you didn't even recognize it. Now you recognize it, but you're just too late. So now what you're going to do is start doing it enough where you recognize what to look for first and then anticipate and then respond. And then all of a sudden the dog will it'll make sense to the dog. So I look at a memory and I go, it's valuable for a lot of things, but what it's really important is it allows dogs to understand, pick up something on the ground, not necessarily something being thrown or movement or running. Because antlers, you're not going to watch a buck run in front of you and shed its antlers. I saw it once on YouTube. You're just not going to see it. So you got to understand that this is a search thing. Go out and look. And when I find it, bingo, light bulb, pick it up and watch Dad get excited. So, but to do a memory, what do you need to do? Well, I got to be able to walk out a distance, drop a dummy or pitch a dummy, turn around, tell them no, turn around, walk them back, turn back around, line them back up, be a little bit patient, line them out and send them. Well, that what I just described, if you can't heel well, you can't do that drill. If your dog isn't steady, you can't do that drill. If your dog doesn't have the focus and the attention span to put these 3 or 4 steps and be able to process and link those all 3 together, if your dog can't line, you can't do this drill. So you need all those foundational things in order to piece this drill together. And when you first start piecing this drill together, don't do it at 35, 40, 50, 60 yards. Do it at 3 or 4 steps, turn around and send the dog short and build off of that. So it's this baby step incremental mindset, but you can't turn a memory drill into a healing lesson because you'll get nothing out of it from a memory standpoint, and you probably won't get shit out of it from a healing standpoint either because you're going to be muddying the waters with 3 or 4 other things that get in the way. So you're going to end up frustrated at the end of a session, and then your frustration will transfer down the lead. The dog will say, I'm done. I'm sorry. I apologize. I just don't want to make more mistakes. A lot of times guys get pissed about that, and then they start putting more pressure on, and all of a sudden we've got a completely dissolved session. Yeah. Well, we're going the wrong direction with it.
For sure. Well, and so all of this, I agree wholeheartedly with all of this because, it's like you said at the start of this, dog training is dog training. Nobody's reinventing the wheel here. Yeah. So, everything from the timing and the drive, essentially, our target is shed is completely different than birds. But ultimately, it's the same thing. Dog training is dog training.
Totally.
So let's get into here for a little bit some actual specific shed dog stuff.
Sure. Let's
start with the gear. Let's start with you mentioned your the dummy that you developed. Start with that, and I'm assuming some scent is required. Yep. Walk me through what Jeremy's must-have list of gear to train a shed dog effectively.
Yeah, pretty simple. I think, in my bag right now, if I'm working a shed dog, I've got a training dummy or 2. I've got some tennis balls. I've got some scent. I make a liquid antler scent. We sell it with our antlers. We sell like a kit, a training booklet, a training dummy, and a scent. And then we sell the dummies by themselves because just like anyone else, I need multiple dummies. And we sell the scent by itself and all that. But a tennis ball and that liquid scent was really a nice little training tool. I love tennis balls for all my training. And it's because I think a tennis ball is a really valuable thing for most dogs. I don't use it. I'm cautious. I don't use it all the time. I use it for certain drills. I use it at certain times. I use it with certain dogs that when I need to get something a little more out of them. That tennis ball is a pretty big reward for some of them. I like a fresh tennis ball, not one that, as we use them, they kind of get matted down and that fur kind of gets worn off. And so I like a fresher ball that's got it's almost like a sponge. I'll take that liquid scent that we have and I'll put it on the tennis ball. And I do little hunt commands for dogs to hold an area. I like a dog to be able to hold an area for multiple reasons. So I might use a little bit of cover and some scented tennis balls for that. I take tennis balls and I'll take a tennis racket and I use chuckets. I like tennis rackets. Put that scent on the tennis ball, and I'll smack that tennis ball and I'll skip it across the ground, and you'll actually see the little mist that's left with it. Well, that's a really nice little scent trail for them. And so I'll put that antler scent on the tennis ball and associate some real positive stuff with the idea of it. I think dogs like to work. I think they look at work differently than we do. I don't think we think of work the same. You know, you hear people talking about working their dogs like it's playing their dogs, but it's something they really enjoy doing. And so for me to work the dogs, I want it to be fun. That's where I get that extra kind of oomph out of that with the tennis ball. With the training dummy, I use the training dummy a lot. It's really convenient. It's easy to carry around. It's not sharp and poking like an antler in my pocket in my training bag, but it also floats. So it's made out of a material that will allow them to pick it up and feel pretty good in the soft mouth of a dog. Like most the dogs that I'm working with have been bred pretty well, and they have pretty natural soft mouths. Like I don't run into a lot of chomping. I think it's a combination of genetics and cultural. Like I don't encourage it. I don't allow it. I do not play tug of war with any of my dogs. I don't encourage dogs to chomp. I don't want dogs getting hard on anything because again, I'm using these shed dogs, same dog I'm going bird hunting with, and I don't want damaged game. So I encourage that soft mouth and delivery. I use this training dummy because of that. I don't have dogs blink on it. I don't have dogs run up to a hard horn and go, oof, that doesn't equate. Like my mouth is not made for that kind of thing. I have dogs that I have to encourage to pick those up eventually. And what I do is I like to build their confidence. The best way to have a dog pick up a live bird is not to start out with a live bird. Like I don't want that thing flapping. I don't want that thing soft. I don't want that thing slippery. I like to start out with my dogs to pick birds. Before they picking birds, they're picking a frozen bird. They're picking a bird that not frozen so hard that it's uncomfortable in their mouth, not frozen so much that there's ice on it. I like to let it get a little bit thawed off and wipe that off so it's dry. I don't want it wet. I don't want feathers coming off of it. So I want those dogs to be confident with it, because I can't tell you how many people have come to my house and said, I can't get my dog to pick a bird. And if they do pick it, they tear it apart, or they pick it and they run off with it, or they chomp on it, or they have all sorts of issues when it comes to these birds. So we go to the freezer and I pull out a bird and I take a towel and I wipe it down and I go over and I put it in the dog's mouth. And they go, what are you doing? I'm going to get your dog to understand to take a bird in its mouth. I want this to be a pretty good thing. Oh, I've been just throwing it. I took a fresh bird and I threw it for them and I expected them to just go do it. Well, why wouldn't they? They're bird dogs. But it doesn't always work that way. So some dogs will do it, some won't. So when the ones that won't, I back up and I go, well, hell, I don't need you to go pick it up. I just want you to feel it in your mouth first, so that when you do go to pick it up, you do run over to it and smell it, you realize it ain't that bad when I put it in my mouth. Some dogs just can't get over that hump. So I do the same thing with this antler. Like I turn this into a little game. This little soft-shaped antler turns into a pretty fun thing that when I take it out of my pouch, it's not, oh no, here comes that thing that hurts my, that I don't like. It's, oh yeah, cool, this is going to be a lot of fun. What should we do, Dad? And then it comes back to this idea of I like to maintain focus on young dogs. That's where the obedience right away comes in. So get them back under control and play. I want this to be a game. I want it to be fun. I want it to be something that we do short and sweet and leave them wanting more. So my bag is pretty simple. Training dummies, tennis balls, a little bit of scent. Not much more than that.
Too easy. You mentioned again, you've mentioned it a few times this episode, is you bird hunt the same dogs that you shed hunt with. Mm-hmm. And just in my head, I have a very clean routine on starting a dog on to hunt. There's obvious visuals. They know what's going on. They know that I'm in orange. They know I'm carrying a shotgun. They understand that. But I still do the same sequence every time just to get their mind right, just to say, hey, we're hunting. And so I'm curious do you do anything different to start the quote-unquote hunt with your dogs when they're shed hunting as opposed to bird hunting?
No, I don't do anything different. Let's go. I mean, I bring them out, let's go. And now we go to quarter. And so one thing I will do different when I'm shed hunting, and that's a great great question, and I'm glad you brought it up because I probably would have forgot. But one of the things I will do is, especially with a young dog, and this is a big thing that comes up with shed dogs, is you think about developing a bird dog. I can be a member at some game farm, and I could have a pheasant dog on 100 pheasants a day if I wanted to. I mean,
Yeah.
I could do put and take, and I could do hunt scratch birds, and I could get a dog a lot of opportunities once their training is in place, and they're to the point where I need to give them experience. I can develop a bird dog pretty easily in areas with, even if I don't have wild birds, I could put them on some game farm birds. Now, I'm not a pen raised bird guy. The pheasants that I raise, I don't keep any of them. I let them all go. And because all I want, like I'll raise 500 pheasants chicks, and I'll let them all go this year on my property. And I they don't stay on my property. They're all over in this area for a very short window before they get picked off by predators. But I do it 100% for the dogs. And so I raise these birds and I let them go, and I'll see a trickling down of those birds over. I'll see them as late as into December-ish, but they move away because there's a lot of them get taken out, but the ones that make it, because I know some birds come back in the spring. I start hearing roosters cackling in the spring, and we don't have birds around here. So I know there's some of my birds, but they go where the food is or wherever it is they're surviving through the winter. But I release 500 with the hopes of maybe a dozen of them being around with some type of consistency that my dogs can bump into them as we're working through. So I want them to be very wild birds. Like I had a dog I just got done working with for a client, had her for a year. We did a YouTube series on her, and I wrote an article for Gun Dog on her. And we took her and got her to Flushing. And so she came, long story about her, but we ended up, I couldn't get her to hunt on pen-raised birds. She didn't have an interest in them. If they weren't moving from her, which they weren't, they're smart. I mean, the pen-raised bird is dumb and doesn't think much of a predator. So that dog wouldn't flush. Just wasn't interested in those pen-raised birds. Now I took her. We finally made some headway with her, and then I took her up mid-September, which is when our grouse season starts, and I grouse hunted with her for up and through November, and she just really blossomed, as a grouse and woodcock dog. But it was wild birds that did it for her, and her foundation was fantastic. She's just the sweetest little dog. She's a great dog, wonderful dog. But it took pen-raised birds weren't going to turn her into a bird dog. So I think you can give dogs experience pretty easily with birds. Sheds, I don't know a lot of guys that find 100 sheds a year. I don't know a lot of guys that find 100 sheds in their lifetime. I know some people will find 3 or 4 a season, and that's a really good year for them. So I look at that and I go, the opportunity to develop that shed dog is a fraction of what a bird dog is. And so the reality is you don't get a good bird dog by having them flush 3 birds a year. Like they can't turn into good flushing dogs, flushing 3 birds a year. So you need to give them opportunities. So you have to have realistic expectations as a shed dog trainer and a hunter, and you have to realize like it's a real test of patience. I get a lot of people that find a handful of antlers and their dog runs over them the first season. And they get so damn mad at that dog that they pick that antler up and storm off like a little kid, just pissed off at their dog that didn't find it. And I go, man, you really blew that, because there was your opportunity to get an actual antler to click. My first, Ellie, she's my mama dog in the back with the pups right now. Her first shed dog, I was live on Facebook. First time shed hunting. Her first shed that she found, I went live on Facebook for it, and I saw the antler first. I knew it was there, and I was gonna show, she tripped on it. She literally stepped on it at least once. She ran over it 3 or 4 times, and I'm holding her in the area on a hunt command, and I'm holding her and holding her and holding her. She's looking and looking and looking, and she's a really nice dog, well-trained dog. And all of a sudden, boom, she actually saw it, picked it up, brought it back to me, wagged her tail. I was so embarrassed because I'm like, God, that was awful. That was awful. But you know what? It was one of the most powerful things and valuable things that people watching could see, because they went, that's exactly what my dog did. And let me tell you, she's a really good dog. It just took, that was her first chance. It was her first chance to pick one up. It took a while. So we have to realize that it takes time and it takes repetition. You can't expect your dog to know everything if you don't give it opportunities to do it. And that's sometimes a real test for us as trainers and dog owners, and that's why I like training dogs so much, because it really makes us better people. Like, we become more patient out of necessity. If you want to be good, like if you're short-tempered and you can't accept that the 99% of the time when the dog does something wrong, it's because you did something wrong. Like, when my dogs make mistakes, I don't, God damn you, dog. I go, you idiot, Jeremy. What did you do? Because that's what created the problem. Always. But you have to be okay saying that. You got to be okay to say, you know what? I screwed up this many times in this session. But then how do you get better next time? You know, every time the dog makes a mistake, I think it's an opportunity for them to learn, but probably a bigger one for us.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Walk us through. We can start wrapping this up here in a second, but first I want to hear some actual drills. You know, walk us through from your very basic. You just mentioned your tennis ball and tennis racket. Is that what we're starting with? And then what are we doing from there? Are we going out and hiding them out in the bushes and the shrubs, and, you know, and some briars to where we typically might find some antlers? Kind of walk me through some drills that we can work in our backyard with our dogs and hopefully develop this.
So I always start out with the basics of, you know, I start in the hallway, you know, with everything I do. So, like, I'm going to use the training dummy in a really controlled environment. I'm going to put it in I'm not going to take a new thing and take it outside and have it be a world of distraction with it. So I'm talking more with a young dog. With a young dog, I'm going to use that training dummy, get it comfortable in a comfortable spot. So my hallway is a really good place for me to do that. From there, I can, as long as I have control and I've got a nice delivery with the dog, I'll go outside with it. I'll do the exact same drill. You know, I can set it up as memories or I can set them up as marks. I'll do a combination of all of them. But I want the dog real comfortable with the idea of there's something that's worth retrieving. And I want it to be real controlled and structured, because I want to eliminate opportunities for things to go amiss. So if I got a dog that's delivering well, I'm going to do some memories. I'll do memories through cover. I'll do memories through barriers. I'll get the dog just, like, he can't help but see one of these things and recognize I'm running out there to find it. There it is, pick it up, bring it back. At the same time, I think you can develop the nose part of it in different drills. I like to develop the visual as one cue, and I like to do the scent discrimination as a second. I don't combine them oftentimes. Like, towards the very, you know, when my dogs are older and more, you know, it's more like we're practicing, not training. Then I'll work in where we might have some visual and some scent work crossed into the same drill. But even with my gun dogs, I don't typically combine the two. We're going to do nose work, and we're going to focus on building this skill or trait. We're going to do some marking work, or we're going to do some visual work. We're going to focus on setting the drill up for that. So I like a bright white dummy for color contrast. I'll put it in short grass. It stands out like a sore thumb. Dog runs to it, picks it without hesitation, brings it back, delivers. So we're getting this idea of, there's the antler. Pick it up, bring it back. Good. The tennis ball, I like that scented tennis ball in a little bit of cover. I like taking drills, and it's a hunt command, but I'll take my lawnmower and I'll make pockets. I'll create pockets of cover. So when I say cover, a lot of times people think right away we need like waist high set aside grass.
Just shin deep.
Yeah, get it taller than the tennis ball, right? So but I'll start out with something simple like that. I'll work dogs in that cover. I like to get dogs to hold the cover. So some of my drills, the tennis balls are already in there, and I'm sending the dog in to hunt. Some of the dogs, I'm stopping the dog in there to start out with, having them face me, and I hunt my dogs to the whistle a bit. So I'll go from the whistle, and I'll start giving them my cadence, and I want the dog to hold the area, hold the area, hold the area. Sometimes the tennis balls aren't in there. So I put the dog into the cover. They know this game. They've already seen it. Yesterday we picked up 3 tennis balls in there. So they go into that area and they start hunting. And then real quickly they go, they're not here. So no, they're there. They're there. So I give them that command. Hunt, hunt, hunt. Hold the area, hold the area, hold the area. About the time they're going to quit, I slip a tennis ball in. And they go, oh my God, there it is. And they go, oh, he knew again, you know. And all of a sudden this renewed trust in me is built. So I want them to, I want to push that at times. Because when I tell a dog to hunt an area, I want them to stay in the area and hold it. So I think if we, you know, we that's a very simple drill that I use. Everybody uses a hunt command of some sort. Hell, starting out with that, I don't even use tennis balls. I use kibble. You know, I got this little puppy right here, this little setter pup. So I'll go out. Now I can't do it because we got snow, but I can do it in the snow. I can take snow and I can shovel a circle around and create this area that has more snow in it. So there's a clear barrier between short snow and tall snow. And I'll take a handful of kibble. I'll just throw the kibble in that snow. And then I'll let the dog use her nose. And right now I don't say anything to her. I just let her find it with her nose. Let her find it with her nose. Let her find it with her nose. Then I can start to overlay that with some commands. I can give her a dead or a lost or whatever I want to use for a hunt command. I can build the cadence of the whistle into it later. But so those are important. I like, you know, we don't have the option right now either, but in the summertime, I struggle with the heat. You know, like where are you located?
I'm in Middle Tennessee.
Okay, so you got way more heat than I do. Like I think it's hot out, and I mean it's not that hot out. But when
it's the reverse of the cold. We don't get cold down here,
right?
Like according to y'all, anyway.
Right. So relative when it gets hot up here, and what I call humid, which would be insulting to you guys, but what I call hot and humid up here, I struggle with some of my dogs working them. I can't work them past real early in the morning, and so. But our water stays pretty cool, so I can get away with water work a little bit later. And so I like a lot of water work. Well, with a shed dog, I use the training dummy in the water because it floats. So I'll pitch that out, and I'll go, and my dogs love the water. So if you've got a breed that really likes water, you can start associating another positive thing to the idea of, oh my God, there's that thing again. And so they're swimming out, picking that shape. So I'm going to do that seasonally, you know, as it goes. The quartering to me it's very much a connection thing. So like I need a dog to work within a range, and I think that it's very important to have, you know, I'm finding that the setter, well, where I got this dog from, Northwoods Bird Dogs, they're pointing dog trainers, and so they talk about handling. And as a retriever guy, I know what handling is to me. It's very different from what they call handling. Their handling is what I call connection, feel, and trust. And we both think it's very important, but it's just defined differently. But like I want dogs checking in with me. I want to get dogs' eyes. I want dogs moving with me. So I'll set up, again, fields, and I'll mow strips, or hell, you can find these types of scenarios too. But I want to move with the young dog, and I want the dog moving with me. And when the dog hits the edge, whether it be a mowed strip or a fence or whatever it is, before they get to it, as they're moving with me, I'm going to peep my whistle. I'm going to get their attention. But before I peep the whistle, and I just do a double peep. I go beep, beep, and that gets them their eyes. Well, before I do that, I'm turned and I'm going the opposite direction. I'm going like a 45 away from them. So when I beep, beep, they turn to look at me and they go, oh, no, he's going that way. Now they're going with me. They get going. They get a little confidence. They get a little cadence going. I turn, beep, beep. They turn around. They go, oh, he's going the other way. Now all of a sudden you get this dog to start moving with me. And my angle itself can be less and less as the dog starts to get the understanding of what this rhythm is. So, you know, I'm, again, a flushing dog, I'm going to do the same thing with them. So I'm working all these little parts and pieces and developing these little skills and then slowly starting to piece stuff together.
Yeah. It's so similar in a lot of ways to a lot of the drills I do, especially, you know, the duck search still comes to mind just because it's an independent search, right? And, you know, and ultimately that's what we're talking about is developing a dog that can do an independent search, but along with you and with some cooperation. So much that, like in the field session that you're talking about, where you don't want eyesight, you want the dog to really use its nose. Go do it at night.
Sure.
Go in a field and go stash some stuff out in the field and search. And a lot of people get a little uneasy about maybe not being able to see their dog in the field or whatever. These e-collars that we have, all the Garmin collars, you can turn the light on the collar, and then that way you can feel a little bit better about it. But that really kind of gets the dog to focus in on their nose. I do have a question for you. When you get to the point of you're going and planting some sheds out there and you're trying to get the dog to hunt for it, do you give it a certain amount of time to pass before your foot scent leaves?
Yeah.
We just don't want the dog tracking us
Sure.
to the object, right?
Sure. And people
how do you go about setting that up?
Yeah, people get really nervous about that. And I look at it and I go, guys, think about this. So I've heard people say, well, you got to put gloves on. And I go, okay, latex gloves. First off, I can smell a latex glove. So everything we touch, I know my dogs smell it too. Well, how come we don't wear latex gloves when we train pheasant dogs? Why don't we not touch the birds why do we not wear gloves when we're touching the birds so that we don't put our scent on them? Because we certainly are. We're putting our scent on them as well. Because people don't realize and think about how dogs' noses actually work, and I think it's a little disrespectful to them, to be honest with you. I look at it and I go, if you're concerned with, because like you hear about the game farm, the game farm dog that tracks the tracks to where the guy planted the bird, and they literally do that. I mean, they get very smart to it. Because what happens? Yeah. So that's what I think stirs a lot of these concerns with people when it comes to, well, what about this with shed training? What about that? So like people talk about, they follow your tracks to it where you go plant the shed. They think that. I think people think that because that's what they saw the dog do at the game farm. It ran to where the guy, like when there's snow on the ground, you can see where the guy walked and the dog tracks the guy to it and he flushes it. Well, the guy at the game farm has to take the bird, dizzy it, and set it down into the cover. It's right where he stopped walking and then he turned and walked away from it. I walk out to where I'm going to be and I can throw it 35, 40 yards from wherever I am in another direction and move it away. So I don't care. If they follow my tracks, they don't get anything. Like, there's nothing for them at the end of my tracks. So they have to get this idea of I have to move and quarter, and if I get them understanding that that's a pattern that we work, then they become a sweeper for me, is all. So what does that do? What does that tell me when I'm shed hunting? If you shed hunt, this is the problem why some people don't find antlers with their dogs, and they go, because my dog doesn't know what it's doing. I look at it this way. If you take your sweeper and he sweeps 25 yards to each direction for you, and you walk him through a section of woods that doesn't have any antlers, you're not finding any antlers, no matter how good the dog is. I think a lot of people think that a good shed dog finds antlers no matter what. If there aren't any antlers there, you don't find sheds. So we have the sweeper. Well, we are controlling where the sweeper sweeps. You better put the sweeper in the right spots. So you have, like, I become a better shed hunter because of the dogs, because I went more often, because I found more sheds, and every shed I found, I learned this is the kind of stuff I need to be in. I need this type of cover. I need this type of food sources. I need this type of area. I need all these things in order for the antlers to be there. And then I take the sweeper through, and he helps me find them. So I think that we don't, like, if you've got a good bird dog, and you take it to an area with no birds, like literally there are no birds there, your dog won't find any. No matter how good the bird dog is. And people always know that, and they recognize that. It's the same with the shed dog. So I do think that we have to realize that is when we're training, if you think you're going to fool your dog's nose with rubber gloves, and that's what's going to create them to be a shed dog, I think your ideas of training are probably a little bit off. Like, I look at it, I don't care if my scent is on it. And the reason I don't care if my scent is on it is because as long as the antler itself has scent, which real antlers do and my training dummies do when I add scent to it, that layer of scent, all those layers of scent, the dog's picking up on all of them. So once I start taking a few of those layers off in the wild, there's still the real ones there that are going to be associated with. I should go look at that. And if I look at that and it looks like one of those things, I should pick that up. And if I pick that up, he gets real excited when I bring it back to him. And so, yeah, I try not to overthink that stuff. I don't leave them out for days because I go, it doesn't matter. I want the dog to hunt, pick. Bring him back to me.
Yeah. It sounds like, I mean, getting a better feeling for you and your outlook on training dogs, you really should just rename your Dog Bone podcast over to just Keep It Simple. Because
Yeah,
it sounds like that's really all you do. You don't overthink anything, you just keep it simple.
I think it's easier that way. And you know, one of the things I skipped over, and you brought it up, what do you bring shed hunting? Here's the one thing I would say, because you don't find so many. Most guys don't find lots. I put a little shed in my back pocket. And so especially with a young dog, especially on their first season, if I go for, and I change the way I hunt, I don't go for 4, 5, 6 hour walks with young dogs and expect them to be able to maintain that. It's just too hard. It's too hard. I couldn't take my little kids on those walks. I can't take the young dog on it. So I do actually look at, like, when I'm going to shed hunt a farm and figure out where am I going to walk, how am I going to walk it. I'll park the truck in spots where I know I can get back, and I know I can give the dog a drink, and I know the dog can get put in the crate for a little bit and kind of regroup and regain its thoughts. I put the antler in the back pocket, and every 15, 20 minutes, if I need to, I'll drop the antler and circle back around and let the dog find it, just to keep them engaged, because I see, like, their interest level and their enthusiasm skyrocket when they get a little victory, when they get a little win. I think we got to look at this and realize it's our job to tee them up. Like, we gotta have them be successful if we want them to stick with it and want to do it and put the amount of time into it before it becomes something they're good at. Like, it needs to be a skill that's honed, and you can drop an antler 50 yards from the truck on your way out and then end it on a good note. Find that antler right when you get, now don't forget it, but when you get back, find that antler and let the dog end it on a really positive note. Let it be a big win. Simple stuff like that.
No, I love it. Tips like that. I mean, I was going to ask something like that if you did that, but Jeremy, I appreciate you coming on. We won't hog in any more of your time. Go ahead and plug all your stuff, where they can find your podcast, where they can find your training equipment.
Sure.
Sign up for any of your courses and everything that you have coming up.
Yeah, all of our stuff is, and I got some guests that just came in. My little ones came in. All of our stuff is Dogbone Hunter. So dogbonehunter.com is our website. All of our social media stuff is at Dogbone Hunter. Our podcast is the Dogbone Podcast, PAWDCAST. Probably we thought it was clever, and it probably was a really foolish mistake. But no, if you search Dogbone, you'll find it. But it's real. We really try to use those platforms to again share as much information as possible. So that's probably the easiest way to get any of them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. If you're listening to this, go check it out. I like your podcast because it's kind of short and sweet. It's not an overly lengthy podcast, but you cover a wide range of topics. You
Totally.
Could be talking about shed dogs one week, and the next week you're talking fundamentals, listener Q&As and stuff like that.
A lot of
you
that,
kind of cover. Yeah, you do a lot of that. So check them out. Jeremy, again, thanks for coming on, sharing some of your thoughts and wisdom. And overall, if you're listening to this and you want something to take away from it, keep it simple.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.